Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Welcome to Legends in Leadership. This is Jason Smith, your host for today's episode. I'm a family officer with the Carrington Group. My co-hosts today are Tyler Tallman, also family officer with Carrington Group, and Blair Ritchie, executive director of the International Student Foundation. Welcome, guys.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, let's kick things off with our leadership trivia question. We're fascinated by the stories of leaders, where they come from, and who they become. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Blair for today's trivia.
Well, thanks, Jason. Today's feature leader is a man who would be 100 years old this year. And the fact that he actually lived to the ripe old age of 95 is somewhat of a miracle, given the fact that he grew up in abject poverty and spent many of the best years of his life in a prison cell. But he overcame overwhelming odds throughout his life. He earned a law degree and went on to represent the most disenfranchised groups of his nation. His voice for freedom and justice could not be silenced by those prison bars. And upon his release from prison, this man was actually elected president of his country and became an icon of grace-filled, principle-based leadership. Do you know who this legend in leadership was? I'll be back at the end of the program to give you the answer to that one.
Wow, that's quite a story. All right. Well, I'm excited to welcome Tom O'Donnell to this episode today. A little bit about Tom. He's co-founder of a national medical laboratory and consulting company, a 9-time Inc. 5000 honoree, and now Chief Adventure Officer at Crazy Ventures. Tom's unique ability is relating to people and connecting with their passions, going on crazy adventures, and having real experiences in order to help people believe in themselves and live with hope and freedom. So welcome to the show, Tom. That's quite an inspiring, unique ability. Yeah. Well, kind of wanted to start maybe rewinding a little bit, hear a bit about your background growing up and maybe an early event or interaction you had that you could point back to as helping shape the leader you've become.
Yeah. I would say one thing that was a little bit unique about my growing up was that I was homeschooled.
Okay.
Starting in 7th grade through high school. But in that experience, it really opened up all opportunities and options. Like, school was not structured, right?
Right.
It was very much, what do you want to learn today, you know? And it led myself, my brother and sister into just being more free and not so process-driven, you know, like following all the rules and everything. And I don't know. It just that was just a unique part of my upbringing.
Yeah. So what was I guess maybe the motivation or the inspiration to allow you guys to explore education in that little bit unorthodox manner?
Yeah, well, we moved a lot.
Okay.
We moved a lot with my dad's job and jumped to about 2 schools per year, you know, kindergarten through 6th. And, so my parents were thinking, you know what, we need to, get a little bit more stability in not jumping around so much. But you know, also it was their desire to give us that unique education.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great. Well, I know in addition to being a leader yourself, you're a student of leadership. You help coach other leaders. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on an age-old debate. Where do you fall in that question of, are leaders born or are leaders made?
I fall on the side of leaders are made, mainly because it's who you're surrounded with, your environment, the encouragement that you get growing up Sure, I think there's a little bit of the natural instincts in there of natural-born leaders, but those natural-born leaders could just as easily grow up in an environment that is very discouraging and, leads them down a different path, and they know
Sure.
they're never leaders,
Yeah.
So
Tom, talk a little bit about those influences in your life. So who were the top 2 or 3 influencers that helped you become the leader you are today?
So I'll say first, my dad definitely was the number one influence in my life as far as leadership goes. He would come home and just say, "Here's the book that I'm reading today, How to Win Friends and Influence People," or Think and Grow Rich, and all the classic books. Raving Fans and all this stuff. And I don't know if he necessarily thought it was going to lead to becoming an entrepreneur and business owner and leader, but it was a huge influence on my life.
Now, you talked about traveling all over the country, so tell me about your dad. So what was his profession?
So he was also in the healthcare and life science space, consultant, contractor for Raytheon United Engineers at the time. And in the U.S. there was different projects throughout the U.S., new manufacturing facilities being built, and he was a part of the project team that would run those projects. So so that let us, every 3 to 6 months or year, going from one project to the next.
Right.
And we decided to travel with him.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So in the camp of leaders are made, the thought process,
Yeah.
how do you encourage, or how do you would advise someone that wants to be seen as a leader and to grow as a leader? What are those things they need to do to grow into that role?
Well, I always feel like the first thing is know yourself, be comfortable with yourself, have that confidence. People see right through your lack of confidence, right? And I don't want to follow somebody who's like very unsure of themselves or not comfortable in their own skin, right? I don't necessarily think they don't have to be right or have the perfect plan or know exactly where they're going, but they're just confident in themselves, right? So I would say that's one thing, is to put that work in to know yourself, right? Discover what it is that you really are great at. And then also it's who do you surround yourself with? I feel like that makes a huge difference in the quality of that leader as well, their network.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the concept of Crazy Ventures. You're the chief adventure officer.
Yeah.
And how did this concept come to be?
Well, it actually came out of as my brother and I built our business. It was with the intent of getting out of that industry, not the most exciting space to be in, highly regulated. But anyway, we put the work in to create that self-managing business and to take ourselves off of the leadership team of the business so that we could free ourselves up to pursue our passions and unique ability. And that's one of the things that I then, once I accomplished that in our business, I then went to work on who am I, right? What is my unique ability? I was a member of Strategic Coach, and I went through this process of it's called the unique ability process. And the statement you read in the beginning, that's where that came from.
Okay.
So it's just one of those things where as I read the statement back and look at my 10 best habits, I just thought, I can create a business around this.
Right.
Right. And it has a lot to do with getting people out of this, what I always view as the rat race, and comfort zone, right? People's normal day is pretty repetitious,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to take you out of that and experience something new, maybe it's unique, a different country, you know, country speaking a different language, you know, it kind of forces you into a different mindset,
Yeah.
you know. So
So when you say the rat race, my mind goes to the typical, W-2 employee trying to get out of the rat race.
well, yeah, it starts in the school system,
Sure.
in my opinion, right? It's that's why I feel blessed to have gone through my homeschooling experience. But a lot of people's lives are designed to be repetitious, and from school into college into the workforce, and either you're an employee, or even if you start your own business, you can get caught up in the rat race, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because we hear about people escaping the rat race to be entrepreneurs, to be business owners, but it sounds like you're finding
Mm-hmm.
that success as an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean you've escaped the rat race.
No. Sometimes it takes you deeper in.
So I'm curious. You went through this discovery period to figure out what your best habits are. Know thyself is what it sounds like.
Exactly.
So what was your discovery there? What did you figure out that were the things that have led you to do what you're doing today?
So I'm in going through that process. There's two parts to it. One is using the Kolbe assessment, and the other is Strengths Finders, right? So on the Kolbe side, I'm a high implementer, which really means I'm more of that hands-on. I like to physically be in the environment or see it, and that's where I like to take people on these adventures, rather than, so there's a lot of theory, of course, in school, or any, you go to a business conference, right? You hear all kinds of information, and it's a lot of theory, and it could be a lot of proven and great stuff, but I want to see it in action, right? I want to put that that conversation that we had, or idea, or and I want to physically make it into a reality. So I feel like when I tie a physical action or an experience to learning, it sticks better, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That's kind of that practical side of, and you're talking about our education system and things like that, and how that, what is the practical application of the stuff that we're learning, and it's really about trial and error and going out and trying things and making mistakes and failing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah, failing is absolutely, I think, a critical part for me anyway of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious. So being that type of person, so you've got you've traveled and you've been on this journey. What are the a couple of failures that you've learned the most from that have led you to becoming a better leader?
Well, in the previous business that I was in the business running, it was one failure after another. My brother and I had no clue how to run or grow or we didn't know what cash flow meant, right? We didn't know how to even pay somebody, right, on a payroll, but we just went and did it. And we ran into a lot of failures. Like I mentioned, cash flow was a huge one. We weren't prepared for that, which led us into maxing out credit cards, not being able to, get groceries that week or whatever it might have been. Sure, if we had that knowledge and were experienced in that, maybe the pain would have been a little less. But it definitely, I would say that was one failure, but learned the hard way.
Sure.
But it stuck, right? We remembered, okay, cash flow. Yeah.
So your recent crazy venture was it a full 30-day bike ride on the road
sure
for 30
was.
Days, riding. So tell us about that trip and how it came to be.
Yeah. So Rene Bohr was the guy who kind of had this idea of I want to ride my bike across the country. And he was having a conversation with my brother, and he asked him, so what's preventing you from just doing that? You know, and he mentioned a few things. You know, we need support to do something like that. That's a pretty big journey, an RV or, you know, a plan, you know,
Right.
just the support of it. And my brother volunteered me to say, you know what, I think my brother would like to do that with you and
Yeah.
help you do that. So then I had conversations with him and further defined what it is that we were going to do. And along the way, we decided to do it as a charity and raise money for a school in Chicago that Renee is associated with.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how the whole adventure started. And yeah, we had an awesome time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just to be disconnected for 30 days in itself was a challenge.
Sure.
You know, but then to pedal the bikes across the country. So we went from Astoria, Oregon to what is our halfway point in Brookings, South Dakota. So we
Yeah.
went 1,700 miles this summer, and then we'll continue on next summer.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. So what is it that Renee was looking to get out of this crazy venture? I mean, there's obviously a philanthropic element to it, but
Yeah.
you know, what
Yeah.
was his motivation to do this?
I would say that one is it's just I've always wanted to do this, right? And a lot of people have that statement. I've always wanted to do something, but for him it was I've always wanted to ride my bike across the country. But also it was disconnecting from his everyday life. And the three of us, there's three of us on this ride, all three of us did exactly that. We disconnected from our everyday life, disrupted the pattern, right?
Right.
And all of us, it became a joke almost, like, all right, guys, today we're not going to learn anything new, right? Let's see if we can get through the day without learning a single thing. And it's kind of funny, but it's impossible to do when you're just every day is a new experience. You're riding your bike through these, you know, towns that literally had 4 people in it, you know, and you know, the conversations that we would have, you know, in the evening after each ride, it just leads to so much the deeper thinking.
Sure.
You know, so that's really what I would say. Not just Renee, but the three of us all got out of that adventure was, you know, reassessing where you are with everything, and you get re-energized.
Sure.
And excited about what you're going to be doing for the next 50 years, 100 years, how, you know, it doesn't matter what the time frame, but, you know, just get excited about the future, you know.
It's fascinating to me that when someone comes to that point in life where they really discover what they're really good at and what they really love to do, what they have a passion to do, life takes on a whole different dimension versus just going to a job or just having a career or whatever else we kind of do. Sounds like that's what you're trafficking with your
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's my number one goal that I would like to see, where I get energy and excited, is when people have that discovery. When I see that they're getting excited about even getting back from this adventure to start this new adventure of their own, right? Whether it's expanding an existing business that they're running, and bolting on new things, or maybe it's completely new, right?
Yeah.
So is that a part of the process? So when you guys are out, I mean, you obviously stop to rest. I mean, are you reflecting on these types of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny because it's in the beginning you're just getting to know each other and all that, but then it you know, I put on a podcast, right? That's usually my first entry point into having these conversations, and you know, they're usually on the topics of retirement or I listen to a lot of Dan Sullivan stuff and human longevity and you know, just reassessing and your life, and that is usually then what starts the conversation. and then we go into more specifics. How does this apply to your life? What is something that you're trying to build or want to build, or something like that? And then we kind of just work through that conversation. Okay, great. You want to build this thing. Let's break that down. What does it look like? So we spend time just structuring that and, creating actionable items that come out of that.
What are some of the biggest things that you find that leaders have to work at, break through to achieve those dreams, or to cut? There's always barriers they're coming up against.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they never get to where they want to go.
Right. I find it's people. Right. It's who they're surrounded with. A lot of times they feel like they don't quite have the right team around them to accomplish this. Especially if you're striving to do this thing or live in the thing, in these activities that you absolutely love. There's other parts of the business that need to happen, right? So if you don't have that support, you find yourself getting sucked into, maybe it's all the finances of the business, maybe it's the selling and you don't like selling and you actually want to just stick to that one thing that you love. And if you don't have the people around you that can take on those activities, you're just going to constantly get sucked into that. So,
yes, I think from an outsider's perspective, when we see these successful entrepreneurs, we assume that it's fulfilling, that they're happy,
right,
because their business is successful. How do you help them, maybe bridge that gap between success and happiness and their passion?
Well, it's definitely a process. Put the time in to work on yourself, rather than always worrying about the activities of the business and everybody else in the business. Take that time, disconnect, like I said, go on those adventures, put yourself in these other experiences where you are more focused on yourself and discovering more clearly what it is that you want to be doing.
So finding that alignment amongst who they are as a person versus their
right.
activities, what they're doing.
Yeah. It's just so easy to forget about that and
sure.
busy work,
Well, it's the whole working in the business and never working out of the business.
Right.
So just constantly head down, and then you never really have a time to reflect on what it is that you really want to do. So
yeah.
So people in these leadership positions, what are they maybe thinking or experiencing that they need to hear, or maybe be motivated to reach out to you and say, I need to explore this idea of a crazy venture? What kind of state of mind are they in today?
Well, I think they're typically feeling burned out.
Okay.
Frustrated. They're, to the outside world, they appear to be really successful, but they're not satisfied with where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I would say typically a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners have a grow or die mentality. So lack of, I don't know, I think they just get they're really frustrated and looking for something more and feel like they're doing it all. And if it wasn't for them, the business is probably going to fall apart. So I would, in that case, it's all about creating process and getting your business more organized, creating the vision, right? Mm-hmm. Getting everybody else on the same page as to why are we in business? Where is this going, right? What's the why in the business? And and then just getting everybody on the team excited and motivated and inspired to execute that. And you have the process around it, right?
Yeah.
It frees the entrepreneur up to not have to do everything and not feel so stressed out by just every little thing in the business.
Yeah. So that ultimately creates the margin in life they need to rediscover passions and interests. And
to think on the business instead of in it constantly.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, last question for you. We'd like to get a leadership nugget from you, maybe from a book or a podcast you're reading today or listening to today that might just be a little bit of an inspirational nugget for the folks listening.
So I just finished reading the book Clockwork by Mark. I can never pronounce his name, like Michael Owitz or something like that, right? But anyway, the book Clockwork is exactly what we were talking about as far as creating the process around your business and freeing yourself up for more thinking and strategy and all that. But that was a great book. I think it just came out, but that was a good one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, definitely enjoyed having you on the episode today. I appreciate you making time to join us, and looking forward to keeping up with more of your crazy adventures.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's time for me to turn it back over to Blair and get the answer to our leadership trivia question for today.
Well, thanks, Jason. We've launched today with going back a little bit in history, but recent history of a leader who was in prison, went from a prison cell to a presidency. And this happened in South Africa, and I think the name Nelson Mandela has become a household name for many of us, and the great leader that he was, and the legacy of leadership that he left behind.
Yeah, wow. Quite a journey. Well, that's a wrap for today's podcast episode. On behalf of Tyler Tallman and Dr. Blair, our special guest, Tom O'Donnell, wishing you a great day. Remember this: if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. Thanks for joining us.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by ISF and Carrington Group. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphan youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. Google International Student Foundation to learn more. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. Google Carrington Group Dallas, Texas to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, and SEC-registered investment advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.